Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Why do you have beer for Halloween?
So this was a tradition. I'm not entirely sure when it started. Um, but for me, Halloween is watching horror movies and drinking beer. Um, and like, I should have a beer in my hand for the entire Halloween night from the time I start watching movies to the end.
You watch like 16 of them, don't you?
Oh, no. October is horror movie
I thought you had
month.
to watch like 3 on Halloween, though.
Yeah. I do watch like 3 Halloween movies on Halloween.
One of them is that you always watch on Halloween,
It's actually Sweeney Todd.
which is convenient.
Yeah, because that's what we just watched.
Welcome to Switching Reels.
Yeah. Welcome to Switching Reels. Indeed. But actually, the candy is a tradition that I can trace. And it's the fact that living in apartments, I would always get candy just in case that we got trick-or-treaters, but nobody ever showed up, so I just ended up eating the candy.
Same with me. I always wanted them to come, but they never did.
I didn't care one way or another, because if they didn't come, I got the candy.
That's a valid point as well, though. Very valid point. I think
For those not benefiting from the video feed, which we do have, I have a beer, and we have a bag of candy.
yes. This is Switching Reels.
Yes, it is.
I said that twice now, though. So
Yes,
we'll see
but
how
it's definitely switching reels now. So today we watched Sweeney Todd.
Today we watched Sweeney Todd. It is not on the top 250. This is a little unique of an episode.
Yes. So we have decided that, and I think part of this is probably because of the fact that I have traditions for just about every holiday and movies to watch on those holidays.
Spooky.
And so I think from here on out, we want to do a Halloween episode. And I mean, 4th of July, I basically got one movie, but it's one I watch every year.
Independence Day?
No, it isn't.
Oh, I love Independence Day.
It's same director, though. And anyone who does an IMDb search will know what it is, but I don't want to reveal it yet.
Sounds good.
But yeah, so my only rule with this one, saying like, hey, I wanted to do a Halloween episode, was I didn't want to do something that was on the top 250 list, because we'll get to those. Alien is my favorite horror movie of all time, followed up by The Shining. And both of those are in the top 250 list. So they were off limits.
Yeah, makes sense.
So with this one, I selected 3 movies, which I won't reveal because we are definitely doing some of those later.
At some point.
But tonight, you chose Sweeney Todd.
I did. I love musicals, and I actually had forgotten that it was a musical up to this point, and what the general premise was, because I thought it was Edward Scissorhands,
which is wildly different.
A completely different movie than Sweeney Todd, and was pleasantly surprised. Yeah, it was very nice.
That's one of my favorite movies that I would actually consider a Christmas movie, is Edward Scissorhands. That's a different discussion, okay. But I would consider Edward Scissorhands borderline Christmas movie.
That's a hotter take than the Die Hard take.
Die Hard's a Christmas movie. It's just not very good. And that one is on the top 250 list.
It is?
Yeah. And so we will be watching it. So I'll get more into my thoughts on that later.
That's fantastic. This was...
Spoiler.
Yeah.
I am not a fan of Die Hard.
That's very funny. Actually, that makes complete sense.
So
personally, this was a much more refreshing and lighter movie compared to Shawshank.
Shawshank?
Yes, which is the last one that we saw.
We watched.
Oh no! Dang it, not Shawshank. Schindler's List.
Yeah,
much more. It was a breath of fresh air.
You are not the first one to confuse the titles of those movies.
They're so close.
They are.
They start with an S, and it's like a weird words. That's all I got.
But yeah, I don't think that this is a particularly light movie, but in comparison to Schindler's List,
very.
Yeah.
No, very, very nice. So, who would we recommend this to?
I would recommend this to. Okay, here's the thing. It's such a different movie, my instinct is to recommend this to someone who is interested in deconstructing genres. Like,
That's very
honestly,
valid.
that's my first thought.
Absolutely.
Because and I'm gonna start a little bit of spoiler here, just a little bit.
Only a little.
So, you know, if you're uninterested in spoilers, probably a good time to sign off. This is a Greek tragedy,
Yes.
mixed with a musical,
Which is beautiful.
mixed with elements of horror.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree.
And it's such a wildly different concoction.
It is.
And I think that's part of what is so appealing to me about it. But yeah, so my instinct is to say, oh, also, there's some crazy satire going on as well.
Just so much.
So yeah, like
it's really funny.
That whole combination is just, again, there's nothing quite like it out there.
Yeah.
But it definitely isn't something that I would recommend to somebody who's like a really big fan of musicals but doesn't like horror movies or something like that.
It's an R-rated musical, so keep that in mind.
Yeah.
When thinking about going and watching this movie.
But yeah, like I don't think that that's anything that that like somebody who's looking for, I don't know, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, right? Like if they're like, this is my favorite movie of all time, I'm not going to point them to Sweeney Todd.
Don't watch this one. So it is Tim Burton. So if you like Tim Burton, please watch it.
I'm a very big fan of Tim Burton. This is definitely the darkest he goes.
That is true.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Like by no small margin.
I'm trying to think of anything else that's darker.
Like Beetlejuice is probably as close as it goes, and this is Beetlejuice times 10.
Yeah.
Like
no, it is,
as far as darkness.
Very, very dark for sure.
Yeah.
So it's dark. If you don't like that, if you don't like gratuitous bloodshed, not even violence.
I don't think that it's gratuitous, but we'll get into that later.
I do think it's gratuitous. But so to each their own, there is a lot of fake blood in this movie.
Yes, there is.
But
I think it serves a very specific purpose, and that's because I've watched the behind the scenes on this movie.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So
we'll talk about that here in a second. That's where that's how we recommend it, I guess.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind if you want to go watch it.
Should this be on the top 250 list? Is it wrong that it is not?
I feel like we should almost skip down to the lowest movie that's on there right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not better than Toy Story. And I know that's on there somewhere.
Yeah, it is.
It's not better than Inception, which is actually
it's pretty high.
Most Pixar movies beat it from a cinematic perspective for me, personally. Yeah. It's not La La Land. So
La La Land's not on there, I don't think.
Oh, it isn't? It should be. Okay. Now I'm gonna revolt, actually. La La Land's not on here.
Actually,
this one's not on there.
It might be. I know it was on there at one point. It may have dropped off, but it was really fun for a while for people to just be like, La La Land's a terrible movie.
What the heck?
And I'm not entirely sure what happened there, because it jumped from like, this is a cinematic masterpiece, which I'm like, I don't necessarily know that it's a cinematic masterpiece,
but
it was a very well done emotional film.
Exceptionally well done. But so if that's not on there, I so far would not put Sweeney Todd on the top 250 in my opinion.
Okay, assuming La La Land is on there.
Assuming La La Land is on there, then I'd say maybe in the low 200s. Like, okay. I think it was an enjoyable movie.
Yeah.
Like, it could even be a comfort movie. I've heard some people call this movie a comfort movie,
really?
Which is weird. Yeah, I don't know. They're strange crowds. But it wasn't like a shock and awe good.
Okay.
For me. And I was like, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say it's the best movie.
So this is actually a movie that's grown on me the more I've thought about it.
Nice.
And would I put it on the top 250 list? Maybe. There are some movies that, we're going to talk about some later that I would kick off of the top 250 list.
in 10 years.
And I would definitely say this is something that should replace
That
one
could
of them.
replace one. I see what you're saying.
Do I think it's as good as a lot of the movies on the top 250 list? Not necessarily, but I do think that it gets overlooked a lot, and I think that people, specifically that gratuitous violence tag, that bothers me, actually, because I think there are a lot of people that just kind of write it off as this sort of, like, I guess, shock like the only value to the movie is the shock value,
And that's not true.
and that's far from the truth.
That's very much not true.
And so, I think that this is a really good film that deserves to be somewhere on that top 250 list, maybe.
Yeah.
I am very far from having seen every film out there, and there are a lot of movies specifically on the top 250 list. I've been paying attention to this for basically since 2015.
Oh, that's later than I thought.
Yeah. So a good 7 years in 2022 where we are right now. I've been paying fairly close attention, and there are a lot of movies that I have seen when they don't have very many ratings that kind of climb up into the top 250 lists, as like even old films that are just foreign films. La Samurai is a movie that isn't on the top 250 list anymore, but I thought it was phenomenal when I saw it, and it didn't have enough ratings to get onto the list. And then it climbed onto the list, and then it dropped down again.
That's so sad. That is drama.
And that's one that I would definitely say belongs there. But this one, I think enough people have seen to say, you know what, we've decided it isn't good enough for the list. There are still some that I would replace this one with. But yeah, there may be other films like La Samurai that will work their way onto the list where I go, you know what, this one doesn't belong there.
Makes sense. So let's go ratings, because we can still totally rate this one.
Yeah. Let's start with just pure enjoyment.
Pure enjoyment.
What was your enjoyment on this one?
My enjoyment was a good 7.5. It was a comfy movie. Like, it's when you go and pop popcorn too, and you have a good time on Halloween night.
Okay. For me, this one's a solid 9 in enjoyment.
Nice.
I really, really enjoy this film.
That's awesome.
The only point that it misses is a lot of times at the very end, I get this weird feeling from the way that the film actually ends. And I've never been able to pin down exactly what it is that makes me feel that way. But a lot of times I just don't like the feeling at the end of the film.
Totally.
Despite the fact that intellectually I think it's the perfect ending. I think it does exactly what it's supposed to do.
Absolutely.
So yeah, for me, enjoyment is a 9.
Awesome.
It loses 1 point for the very end.
How about technical?
Technical, I'd probably put it around a 7.
Nice.
And I'm willing to talk about that with you, but before I do, what would your rating be?
I was going 7.5 or 8.
Okay.
There's a couple things that are just like, oh wow.
Yeah.
Some of the CG is there, and the blood is a little.
Okay. It's the Burton thing, right?
Yeah, it is
like
the Burton thing. Oh, you're right.
Yeah. He has a style. He has a style that he wants to stick to. And I think he does a really good job of sticking to that style. But, like, I don't know if you've ever seen The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, but it reminds me a lot of that.
Sounds like a D&D book.
So that's a Terry Gilliam film. We'll get into some Terry Gilliam later.
Perfect.
He was the animator for Monty Python.
Need to get Monty Python
and
later.
he was the only American in Monty Python as well.
That's funny.
But he went on to direct a lot of other films.
Nice.
But he is in my mind, he is the epitome of incredible vision and doesn't have the budget to make the execution for the animation. Like the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, the first time I saw it, I was like, this is incredible. And I can look past all the bad CG. anytime I've tried to watch it since, I get hung up on the bad CG because there's just so much of it. But yeah, so I feel like Burton does very much the same thing, except he has more of an emphasis on color than I think Terry Gilliam does.
No, very much so. Oh my gosh, Annie Burton.
Like, and there's this weird obsession, specifically with the song "By the Sea," where they're like, that's where it's the clearest.
Yeah, very much so.
But also, there's a lot of people that just really love that segment, and I get it kind of because it's almost this like bubblegum cotton candy sort of feeling in the middle of a very dark movie.
Yes.
And I like that, but also I don't necessarily know that the animation style fits it correctly.
Not necessarily.
But yeah, so that's part of it. The other part is I think some of the rough edges when it comes to, and this is one thing I really saw this time. There's a lot of scenes when he's in his studio, his barbershop.
Yeah.
Where it's very clear that it's a soundstage. Like you can see the lights like blocking things outside of the windows and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say necessarily that it wasn't part of the artistic vision. I just think it maybe should have been something executed differently if they were going for that.
Makes sense.
That being said, I think that as far as stage plays adapted to film, this is just more than exemplar.
Fantastic.
There are, I cannot think of a better movie that was created from a stage play.
Absolutely. I would agree with you, I think.
Yeah. Like La La Land, we brought up, it wasn't a stage play first.
Stage play, so it doesn't count.
Yeah.
And
it was designed for the screen.
I liked Les Mis personally, but I would agree. I think. Well, and I also need to go and see. I've seen Les Mis as a play.
I liked Les Mis as a film. I didn't love it though.
What about Lion King?
Lion King was not adapted.
Yeah, it was. Just backwards to the stage after the movie.
Yeah, it was the stage after the movie. That doesn't count. Reservoir Dogs was a movie, and then it was a stage play.
Oh wait, what about Schoolhouse Rock? Not Schoolhouse Rock.
School of Rock.
School of Rock.
Also backwards.
Was it was a movie.
It was a movie before it was a stage play.
Yeah, and we're not bringing up Cats. So,
what didn't you like about Cats?
So
I'm joking.
Summary that this is probably where the highest intensity of spoilers is going to start.
Yes.
If you've been here for the last 20 minutes,
is one thing.
Thank you.
This is one thing that I will say, and I even presented the movie to you this way. If you don't know what happens in Sweeney Todd, skip the opening credits. It will spoil some things that I think are done expertly if you don't know what's coming. If you do know what's coming, watch the opening credits. It's fine.
If you've seen the play and you know what it's about.
Yeah. But like, if you are going into this blind, I think it's really best to go into it completely blind, and that takes it away. Or the opening credits take away from that.
Phantom of the Opera. Absolutely adore the most recent rendition of Phantom of the Opera.
The one with Gerald Butler?
Was it the...
Like 2004, Joel Schumacher?
Yes. I adored it.
I'm not the biggest fan.
Really?
Yeah. It's fine.
I really liked it. I thought it was really good.
It is not for me necessarily. I will say it does a better job than, again, I think most movies do adapting a musical to screen.
Obviously.
West Side Story, for example, like,
seen it.
Okay, so it's a masterpiece of cinema.
Mm-hmm.
It follows it's too reliant on the stage format.
That makes sense.
And that's one thing that I really like to see movies pull away from when they're adapting musicals.
Absolutely.
Is like, you shouldn't have people dancing in unison in a movie. Like, that just doesn't look right. Like it's fine for a certain
And a certain
aesthetic,
story as well. Yeah.
but if you're doing it for that aesthetic, then you're doing a musical that also happens to be a movie
Yes.
rather than doing a movie that happens to be a musical. And I think what I love about Sweeney Todd is it is a movie that happens to also be a musical.
That's a very good point.
There are a total of 2 scenes in which dancing happens, and it's treated the same as the motif that they do with the music throughout the entire movie. So I don't know if you've noticed, but or you noticed this on the first watch,
Mm-hmm.
but by the end of the movie, we have heard all of these songs, but the lyrics are changing.
That's true.
All of the music is exactly the same,
That's a good point.
but it's eliciting and calling back to all of these emotions that we've heard
Before.
and I just love the way that it builds on itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry. The dancing in this is treated very much the same. There's a total of 2 dancing scenes, and one of them, again, like strong spoiler alert, if you intend to watch this movie and you do not know what happens, please stop watching right now. I cannot stress this enough. In the scene where they initially decide that they are going to grind up Pirelli and put him in a meat pie. That's the first time that they dance.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
The second time they dance is at the end where he finds out that Mrs. Lovett has been lying to him. His wife was alive.
And he killed her.
And the dance ends in him throwing her into the oven.
Yep. There's one more dancing scene. It's the masquerade where
that is a
it is dancing in the movie. And
yes.
Dancing is a focal point of it.
Yes. It is not dancing for spectacle.
No,
and I think that's a big
spectacle.
I think that's a big
It's dancing
difference
for like stage, for presence, for ambiance.
I mean, it's a party where dancing was supposed to be happening. Like
Yes.
I don't think anybody was dancing in that because they were like, this is an expression of what's happening here.
Yes.
But yeah, I think wow, we were still in does it deserve its place on the list, or in this case, should it be on the list?
Yeah, a little bit. And we did ratings though. So
yeah. Well, we've already dived into this some, but
a little bit. Want to give a
summary of the movie? Yeah. Sweeney Todd is a barber who was formerly known as Benjamin Barker. He was taken away as a prisoner.
Under false charges, very important.
Under false charges because a judge was interested in his wife. While he was gone, his wife was raped by the judge, and his daughter, after she took arsenic, was taken to.
The daughter did not take arsenic.
The daughter didn't take arsenic. The wife took arsenic. The daughter was taken to be the ward of the judge. Benjamin Barker comes back as Sweeney Todd, clearly a changed and bitter man, and he takes up residence back in his old barber shop, which is now above a meat pie emporium, owned by Mrs. Lovett. Antics ensue, and he ends up murdering someone, and Mrs. Lovett decides that the best way to dispose of this someone is to put him into meat pies, because meat is hard to come across in Victorian London. At which point he decides that he's not going to be able to get revenge on the judge, and in the meantime decides to just murder people because of satire reasons, honestly. Um, and I mean, honestly, this is a hard movie to sum up. It is a revenge plot, through and through, with a B plot happening between a sailor that was on the ship bringing back Sweeney Todd and Sweeney Todd's daughter having a romance in the B plot. Well,
remind me to not give you the summary.
Yeah, no,
again.
I'm terrible at summaries.
Actually,
dude, I'm a writer.
Goodness gracious! Oh my gosh. Okay, good.
I'm a writer. I don't do summaries.
In case you wanted an actual summary, to sum up what he just said, Sweeney Todd is the story about a barber who is falsely accused, comes back to go and kill the guy that falsely accused him, also looks for his wife. His wife is missing. We learn at the end, wife's dead. He eventually, through killing a lot of other people, is able to get to the judge, kill them as well, all the while making very famous meat pies. And then dies at the end. The only surviving member of his family is his daughter. Whose fault I attribute everything to.
You know what? We can just jump to... I don't know if this is standout scenes or themes, but I want you to go into exactly why you think that it is all his daughter's fault.
Perfect. So, and it's not fair. Poor
Joanna.
In this scenario, she's been put in a really, really tough situation. Her dad gets sent to prison camp. Her mom gets raped and then takes arsenic, but doesn't die and is actually just a crazy lady on the streets. She doesn't know either of those things, probably. She is locked in a house with a very pervy judge.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of that aside, all of the bad things that happen in this movie stem from the fact that she's alive still. If she was dead, maybe Sweeney Todd would have done some weird things and tried to go after the governor, but it wouldn't have been nearly as ambitious. The fact that she's as pretty as she is leads the sailor to wanting to pursue her, which leads the sailor to telling Sweeney that she's alive, which then kicks off his, oh wow, my wife's dead, but my daughter's alive, so I am going to do my best to go and try and rescue her. In this case, rescuing her means killing a lot of people and making them into meat pies. Eventually...
That's when he gives up. It's when he gives up on Joanna. Because that's when the sailor comes in while he's shaving the judge.
Oh, yes, you're right. Okay,
and he's about to kill the judge.
Again, if Joanna was dead before this, it would have been fine. He could have killed the judge once. That's it. One person.
Yep.
He would have gone to jail. He would have been happy with his life. He would have died a happy man.
He would have been happy in jail.
He would have been, he probably would have, probably killed himself or very close to it. It would have been a very nice, sweet, very sad story of a man that needed to come back for revenge, killed one guy.
Sweet, sad story about the man who killed the judge and then went to jail.
Exactly. Not this giant, drawn-out process of killing a portion of either noblemen or well-to-dos, making them into pies, feeding them to people.
Well, no, that's actually something that they address, is he kills noblemen and peasants equally.
That aren't going to...
Because it's either they deserve to be killed, or death is going to be a relief for them.
Which is very funny, because there's symbology between the fact that the judge, after he gave the one sentence you see him give in the whole movie, says that what man doesn't deserve to die?
Right,
and Sweeney Todd agrees completely. We all deserve to die. There's not one of us that doesn't deserve it. We should all be dead right now, actually. You, me, everyone.
Yeah.
So let's do that.
Very, very interesting.
Both of them are on the same side of the killing people coin.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's why it's Joanna's fault. If she was dead, it would have been a much simpler movie with much less heartbreak and sadness. That poor kid that was helping Mrs. Lovett just had an awful time because of Joanna. So did the sailor. I have no idea where the sailor went. He was gone getting a coach. By the time he comes back, Joanna's still there. So he actually has the better end of the stick.
Yeah, actually,
he's the only good thing that Joanna existing.
Yeah, that is actually something that has always kind of bothered me about this movie, even from the first time I watched it, is they just kind of leave the Joanna and Anton story.
Antony?
After Sweeney Todd decides, I'm not going to kill her, thinking that she's just a boy that is hiding in the chest.
That was a very plot armor moment for me.
I can see that, but it is definitely something where I see where he is at that moment, and like Mrs. Lovett is someone that if she's screaming, there's probably something very, very wrong.
That's a good point.
And like, because she is probably a little bit too callous.
Oh, that changes things.
Yeah.
You just killed this man for no reason. He was blackmailing me.
Oh, okay.
That changes things.
But yeah, like the fact that she was screaming, I think was... The first time I saw it, I would have agreed with you. Like, yeah, it's a little too plot armory. In more subsequent watches, I've been like, no, him having spent as much time as he has with Mrs. Lovett, you can see his hesitation. Like, should I kill you? You're not worth it.
Exactly. I've already killed so many people. 3 people in the last 4 minutes.
And I think some of that is his bloodlust being satiated.
At that point, he's finally
killed the judge.
Yep.
Right? And so at that point, his bloodlust is satiated. The only person he kills for the rest of the movie is Mrs. Lovett, and it's only because he finds out that she kept the fact that his wife was alive from him.
Closer to a crime of passion than the premeditated murder that he's been committing this
right,
time.
Yeah. Which, actually, okay, so we've actually hit a lot of these things already, but I am going to jump to themes or standout scenes or technical things. I don't know. It's one of these things. The blood.
The blood.
And the reason that I don't think it was gratuitous, because I've watched the behind the scenes.
There's no pink blood in the world.
There isn't pink blood in the world. You are correct. Some of that is, and it's weird. Blood color specifically varies wildly on different TVs. So it may just be the TV that we watched it on.
That kind of makes sense.
I've seen a lot of the same movies on different TVs, and they look different.
Makes sense.
If you need any evidence of this, just walk into a Target and go look at their TV wall.
There's so many differences in color.
And they will show the same image, but it's just all of these...
Some of them are settings on the TV, though.
Yeah, that's true.
To get you closer.
Either way.
The blood.
The blood. It is... This entire movie is a character study, right? We are studying the character of Sweeney Todd. And there is an overarching plot of what is happening to him and the satire around London, at Victorian London specifically. But each of these people that he's killing is releasing some of the anguish and pain that he feels. It is cathartic for him to slit these throats. Not that it's right, but it is a catharsis moment for him. And so watching the blood spurt in the way that it does, right? Like, that's way more pressure than any human being has inside of them. Except maybe inside your heart specifically.
Maybe.
Yeah. Like, outside of your heart, that's not happening. Each of those throat cuts is him, again, releasing all of the pain that he feels about his wife and about his daughter. And so I don't necessarily think that the blood is gratuitous in this context. I can see an argument for it, but I do think that it serves a very, very distinct character purpose. And therefore, I think that it has an artistic reason to exist.
And I could agree with that it has an artistic reason to exist. Still a lot of it.
Yeah, there is a lot
all
of
over
it.
the place.
Yeah, no, and
I don't know how they kept that room so clean.
that is something that it pops into my head like once every time I watch the movie. I'm like, that's gonna be a lot of blood to clean
A
up.
lot of blood. He has to get a new apron every single time.
Yeah.
He has to get a new shirt most of the time.
The aprons, I was like, they're probably cheap. You could probably buy them in bulk in like packs of 10.
Keep them right next to the furnace.
They're muslin sheets. Like you can.
That's very funny.
The bigger thing for me was, what about his sleeve? In the first time that he kills someone, he puts on the coat to cover up his sleeve.
Makes sense.
And that makes sense. All of the other times, are you telling me that this man who has so many customers is able to just change his shirt over and over and over again with no closet?
See, I feel like he shares storage space with Mrs. Lovett.
Yeah, but he's got to go downstairs with blood outside every single time that he does this.
Or you could take the scalpel, cut off the blood portion, throw it downstairs, walk down like a normal person, change your shirt.
Yeah, walk down with the normal person with your sleeves all cut off.
Yeah, it's part of his appeal. He's just...
What about the people that saw you go up there with full sleeves?
There's only one person who remembers someone going upstairs, and she dies as soon as she enters the room. His wife.
Okay. That's true. But
That's the only...
also,
everyone in London
she's
doesn't
observant
care.
enough to see the fact that the smoke coming out of the chimneys
It's black.
is... Not only is it black, but it's something evil,
Yes.
right? She's observant enough to see that.
Pretty high risk.
She's not observant enough to see that
No,
his
but no one listens to
sleeves-
her. Even if she had.
Yeah, but she goes to him telling him that the lady below is evil.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Which means that if he's able to hide it from her, he's able to hide it from anyone.
All right. Let's talk about some of the satire in this film,
Sounds fantastic.
which I think is brilliant and one of the more overlooked parts of this.
Completely agree. You start.
Yeah. So we're talking about Victorian London here, which you want to talk about social stratification.
Exceptionally.
Yes. Very, very wide stratification between the lower class and the upper class in Victorian England. I think that this entire story was based around basically Swiftian satire. I think that's what probably it started as.
Swiftian satire?
Yes. Are you familiar with The Modest Proposal by Jonathan Swift?
What?
Modest Proposal by Jonathan Swift was a satire that was written in, I think it was post-Victorian England, but basically Jonathan Swift proposed, let's take peasant babies and feed them to the rich.
And
it was a satire.
Okay, that's fantastic.
And the idea was, well, the rich will pay for these babies, so the poor have more money.
Yep.
And the rich will
Have
eat,
more meat.
so that they'll be happy. This is a good proposal for both sides.
Absolutely.
He was killed for it.
Works for the Onion, dies.
But yeah, so I think that this entire thing was like sort of the idea of, feeding people to people as a way for basically a win-win situation between, number one, it was between Sweeney Todd and Mrs. Lovett.
Yep.
But it was also a win-win for the rich and poor
Yep, because they're
in
getting
England.
very
Because
nice food, probably not at exceptionally high cost.
right, and they were getting rid of the undesirables on, the upper end and the lower end.
Yeah.
They talk a lot about people that nobody will miss.
Yes.
Right, and the one time that we see him spare someone is when the man has his family with him. And so I think that this was a really, really intelligent mirroring of Jonathan Swift's Modest Proposal.
Love that.
And this film. And I really want to be able to write something that is maybe not like this exactly, but has all of these elements that are so wonderfully blended together.
Mm-hmm.
He has the satire of that mixed with the tragedy that is his blind seeking of revenge.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just really, done really, really well. I don't know if there's anything that reminds me more of the Greek tragedy of Oedipus more than this film.
Mm-hmm.
He kills everyone that is important to him.
Everyone.
Well, not everyone. But he kills or loses everyone that's important to him in the quest for avenging
yes, exactly.
those people. And in the process hurts people enough to kill him as well.
Yep.
So mixing that with a musical with, honestly, some
very
gorgeous music.
Absolutely gorgeous music. Very, very relatable songs. Not relatable, but memorable.
Memorable.
Don't relate to this music.
Actually, No One's Gonna Harm You.
Yeah.
Beautiful song, and it's
gorgeous.
widely considered a beautiful song. But Jamie Cullum did a cover of that song, and I heard that long before I saw this film. Partially probably because I was too young to see this film when it originally came out. But I was
after Deathly Hallows. Then, oh wait, the book or the movie? Because Deathly Hallows movie was really recent comparatively.
Yeah. I don't know when it was.
We'll go check it out.
Yeah. For those that aren't aware, this has been referred to as a cast reunion of Harry Potter.
Because you have Snape, you have Peter Pettigrew, and you have Helena Bonham Carter as Bellatrix. There we go. I keep thinking her name is Helen and then a Bottom Carter. And so it's a lot easier to remember if you actually remember her name is Helena.
Yeah. So Helena Bonham Carter, Alan Rickman.
Haha, I got one.
Yes. And Timothy
Chalamet.
No. I can never remember his name. It's short, but it's very unique.
Like him.
Yeah. Anyway, he does a fantastic job in this as well.
Absolutely.
Just being the absolute creepiest man.
So creepy. Does so well with it.
Yeah.
It's a very good role for him.
Yeah. To the point where even though he's not the main villain by a long shot, you still get this
pretty satisfied when he dies.
Gross, weird feeling from him through the entire film.
Agreed.
Also, Alan Rickman just does a great job as just this horrible, horrible person.
Yes.
Even if you didn't have that initial scene with him where he rapes the Mrs. Barker, I don't think she ever gets a first name.
I don't think she does.
But even if
wait, Lucy.
Lucy, yeah, you're right. But even if you didn't get that scene, like, the discomfort and, like, almost, I don't know, like, he's such a big, powerful, evil figure.
Yes.
Through so much of this. And I think I even mentioned this to you while we were watching, of when he's sending Joanna away in the cart, and Anthony comes up and says, "Tell me where you're sending her," or yeah, and he goes, "Or you'll kill me. Here I stand." And it's like, that is such a power move.
Exactly.
And yeah, he's just like, and one thing that I didn't pick up until this watch is, you almost get the sense that he knows that he's kind of a bad dude.
Mm-hmm.
And he's almost using his position as a way to not right his wrongs, but as a way to exact his vengeance on people for what he assumes is just the human condition.
Yes, exactly. Which he is a very deep part of, and he understands that.
Right, yeah. It's just, it's a very, very complex character, and honestly, I would love to have had more screen time with him. Less in reference to other characters, because everything we get is in reference to...
Someone
like, we
else.
get a very little bit with Benjamin Barker or Sweeney Todd.
Mm-hmm.
We get a very little bit with Anthony, and we get a very little bit with Joanna, and a little bit with Beetle Bamford. But, like, as far as actual introspection and that sort of thing, we don't get a whole lot from him.
No, we don't.
And honestly, I would have loved to just have, like, one scene where we go, okay, what is going on in this guy's brain? Because I think that he is a very interesting and very complex character that we only scratch the surface of. Not that we would want to delve too deep into him, because,
if you know what I mean.
Yeah, he's... I don't know what you mean, and I don't want to. But it's not necessarily something that, like, he's not a relatable character. He's not somebody that you would want to relate to even, but he is an interesting character.
Absolutely.
At least for me. I think intellectually he's interesting.
Would agree. Good case study.
Yeah. Standout scenes or performances. We haven't touched on this almost at all.
That's spooky.
Talked a little bit about performances.
Actually, we have a little bit.
But
You've already said that Alan Rickman just did a fantastic job. The villains in this were fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily that I'm like the deepest fan of Johnny Depp, but I'm pretty close. I really, really enjoy Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
So I thought his performance was fantastic. Helena Bonham Carter.
Yeah.
Also just did wonderfully.
Yeah.
And
I don't know who plays Toby, but he's one of the better child actors I've seen.
He's really good.
Yeah.
No, he was really
he was really solid.
Yeah, I would totally agree.
As far as standout scenes, though, there is, I think, no better scene for me in a musical, any musical, better than the scene where they take the razors out of the floorboards.
Oh.
And he sings to the razors.
Well, she sings to him. Yeah.
I think that just does an amazing job of setting up from the very beginning who he is and what his focus is and who she is and what her focus is and how their relationship is going to be strained.
Yep.
On top of establishing the revenge plotline overall in just such a gorgeous way, where, like, it's in this almost almost poetic sort of language that he
Yep.
uses talking to
His
razors, telling them that they'll drip rubies.
Exactly.
And like, it's such a good scene. And honestly, if I had to just like remove this film from existence and keep one scene from it, it would be that scene.
That's fantastic.
Probably followed by the song Joanna, where he's just murdering all the people. Because I think that does a really good job of establishing the different types of love that he and the sailor have for the same person.
Yes.
Because his is a more distant love, and one where he is less interested in her because she's her, and more interested in her because she belongs to him.
Yes.
Whereas the sailor is interested in her because she is her. And we don't...
Pretty.
I mean,
sad.
From a...
locked in a tower.
Yeah. From a very objective standpoint, we don't see a whole lot of reason for Antony to do any of the things that he's doing.
He's bored.
Yeah. But from a subjective standpoint, if we are understanding this from almost the perspective of musicals, and just
exactly.
Like the fact that he sees her singing and then he just knows that she wants to be with him. It's like, okay, in real life, absolutely no one's going to
do a thing.
Jump to that conclusion.
That's not true.
If
you do, you're a stalker.
Okay, yeah. But the first time we see them after that scene, she throws him a key.
Exactly. Pretty good hint at that point.
It's
at that
pretty
point,
clear.
now it's back and forth.
Yeah.
You're good. Made connection.
But yeah, I think from the standpoint of the relationships that are established via musical logic, I think Antony's love for her is one where he is willing to risk himself and go into an asylum to save her.
Yep.
Whereas Sweeney Todd's is, I'm just going to stay here and murder people and be sad that I can't see you.
Exactly. Yes. Completely agree.
So yeah.
My favorite scene, I think, is the creating the menu of people scene. And just the fantastic play on words of
have a little priest.
Exactly. Yes. Have a little priest. Exactly.
That is the name of the song.
Oh, it was very good. And I think that's my
comedically speaking,
it's gold.
It is definitely the best in the film.
Yes. It's
so from a comedic standpoint.
So good.
From a tension standpoint, I would say the scene where the song is Pretty Women. Right when
do a great job with that.
Alan Rickman first comes in and is sitting there for the shave, and Sweeney Todd is
multiple times.
Yeah, like every time he puts his razor to the judge's neck, you feel like it's just about to end, right?
And is gone.
But because he has put an emphasis on the fact that he is going to take his time with this. You know that there is, like, he establishes it from the beginning. He's like, revenge can't be taken in haste.
Yeah.
And he says it in the song. And then he starts shaving him. And, like, every time he puts the razor to his neck, you're like, this is the time.
Yes.
And it just never happens.
Yep.
And the tension in that scene, I remember the first time I saw it.
Also Joanna's fault. Actually, the fact that he's even there the first time is Joanna's fault.
Actually, I think we paused it like right after that scene, and that's when you told me that, and I'm like, okay, yeah, you definitely can blame this all on Joanna. I don't think it's fair to.
It's not fair to.
But you can.
It's also her fault that he didn't die in that first scene.
Yeah.
Like.
Yep.
Anyway.
He wouldn't have shown up if she didn't exist, and the sailor wouldn't have shown up partway through the shave if she didn't exist.
Exactly.
So, like,
both of them.
Yeah. I do think a really interesting thing to talk about, and I don't think that this was at all supposed to be the intention, but the only scene in the entire film that I would consider a true horror scene is in the asylum, and it is when when Anthony says, "I leave you to your children," and all of the blonde women attack him.
Exactly.
And I find it very interesting that they chose to make blonde women the only monster in the entire film.
Yeah, exactly. Like the jump scare monster, the creature.
Like, yeah, like it is the most animalistic, monstrous scene. Like, not to say that any of those people are characterized as monsters, whereas several other characters in the film are characterized as monsters. But just from like a film language perspective, like that is the scene where the monster attacks the camera.
Yes, exactly.
And it's very interesting that is what they chose there. It has always felt a little off to me, but now I find it more just funny than anything else.
I really agree.
Yeah. So,
boy, have we been at this for a bit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Goodness, this was a very, very, very good movie.
So yeah, I think that's about it. If we are ready to be done, because we've already talked about next week's film. This was kind of shoved into the middle there. Our next episode is going
to be Fellowship of the Ring, because we're going to go start the Lord of the Rings series, not in the IMDb order, right? Because that's a dumb one.
Yeah.
I think it's...
it's not that it's dumb. It's that the...
312, I think.
Yeah, it's 312.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the order is dumb necessarily, though I disagree with it. It's just, I think that in order to appreciate 3, you have to have seen 1 and 2. And to appreciate 2, you have to have seen 1.
1, absolutely. Completely agree.
Either way, this will be airing on Halloween itself.
Yep.
So, it's not really going to apply to our normal weekly release schedule.
Nope.
But I am really glad we did this, and I'm looking forward to next year.
Completely agree.
I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to make you watch, but it will probably be Scream.
Fantastic. I'm excited for that.
Because
I've heard Scream is great.
Scream is amazing. Don't watch a scary movie. It's basically Scream, but not scary and with no subtlety.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Cool. That sounds nice.
Whereas Scream is a deconstruction of horror.
That's what you were telling
me.
That's fantastic.
You don't have to have seen horror movies to understand. So
love that.
But don't hold me to that. We might watch other horror movies next year.
Yeah, we have a year.
Yeah. So I also might make you watch Us.
I've heard Us is
so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that is, I don't know. That one's just a different movie. That's one where you have to just, I think that, again, if we watch this, then we'll get more into it. But Us was a movie that I walked out and went, I understood half of it and I loved it. And then as I did more research into some of the things that it was talking about, I went, oh, this makes a lot of sense as to what they were trying to say with the film. And I think that's exactly what it was supposed to be doing. That being said, we didn't watch Us this year, so we can't talk about Hands Across America and all of the money that disappeared from there.
I'm very much looking forward to that.
Or Scream, or, we might watch Halloween, or we might watch, honestly, any number of horror films.
Absolutely. We'll see you next year.
But yeah.
See what the next year has for us.
Yeah, see you next year, or I think the calendar that I looked at is like in 3 days. So we might see you in 3 days as well. So
how do we end this?
Yeah. How do we end this?